Hello, Hey Boomer community. My name is Wendy Green, and I am your host for Hey Boomer, the show for people who are transitioning or who have already transitioned to life after full-time work, and they're asking themselves the question, what's next? We cover various topics every week, and this month of May, we are covering health topics, mental health, physical health, emotional health, relationship health. And my goal for Hey Boomer is to have our listeners leave inspired that this next chapter of life can be both meaningful and relevant. Support for today's Hey Boomer show comes from Rhodes Scholar, the not-for-profit leader in educational travel for boomers and beyond, offering expert-led adventures in all 50 states and more than 100 countries. 3 years ago, I took my granddaughter on one of Rhodes Scholar's grandparent programs trips to Chincoteague Island. We had so much fun learning together. It was so well run. And this July, I am going to Glacier National Park with some of Rhodes Scholar's knowledgeable naturalists. Can't wait for that. You can learn more about Rhodes Scholar's National Parks Learning Adventures by going to roadscholar.org/heyboomer. So go on, check out those trips. Every mother contains her daughter in herself, and every daughter her mother, and every mother extends backwards into her mother and forwards into her daughter. That's a quote by Carl Jung, which we used to promote today's program. We can't choose the family we are born into, and our family of origin influences our future and shapes our personalities. People are different, and moms are no exception to that. Some become a mismatch with their kids, and some make the perfect team. But no matter what the case, we will always love our moms because this kind of love is unconditional. So we're going to be talking about mother-daughter relationships. And we're going to be talking about how those relationships influence our female friendships. And my guest today is Dr. Barbara Kaufman. And she's going to talk about the central role that mothers play in the lives of their daughters. Barbara is a licensed psychologist with over 40 years of experience, and she is also a comedian. Her signature presentation, Wisdom at Midlife, is designed to inspire and entertain as she interweaves beautiful imagery, music, stories, comedy, fairy tales, dreams, and midlife wisdom from Carl Jung. But before I bring Barbara on, I want to talk about something important. And this is instead of covering a couple of never too old stories this week. So May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And with the Hey Boomer show and the What's Next coaching program, I work to inspire people that the next 20 to 30 years of your life, after 50 to 60 years old, they can be and they will be meaningful and fulfilling if your mindset and actions support that belief. As a certified coach, I practice on the philosophy that my clients are basically in a good place emotionally and mentally, but that there may be some limiting beliefs or some assumptions that are holding them back from getting to that place where they want to go. And through a series of questions and exercises, we work to uncover those beliefs and build a new set of more supportive beliefs. But there are times when all of us can slip into a dark place. And that is when it is important to work with healthcare professionals and clinical psychologists. Mental health is an incredibly important part of our overall health. With the growing number of Americans experiencing mental health issues, especially after the pandemic that we've been through, it is important that we're able to talk about this and destigmatize it. There are numerous resources, and I want to share two with you. NAMI.org is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. National Alliance on Mental Health Illness. And that is a tremendous resource, educational resource for people that want to explore more about it. The other site that I want to share with you is more for if you or one of your loved ones might be in crisis. And that's the Mental Health America site. It's MHAN, so mhanational.org/crisis resources. So that's a good place to go if you need some more immediate support. So I'm looking forward to bringing you this month's topics, focusing on health. And today we're going to be focusing on the mother-daughter relationship. And with that, I want to bring on Barbara Kaufman. Hi, Barbara.
Hey, boomers. Do you have like you should have like a cheer, Wendy.
We should have a cheer. Hey,
a
boomers.
cheer.
All right. Well, you can help me work on that.
Okay, I will.
All right.
But I'll refer to you as Boomer Wendy, if that's okay.
Okay.
And you can refer to me as Boomer Barb. Anyway,
so yes, I want to start with getting to know a little bit more about you, your background, and what went from psychology to comedy shrink.
Okay. Let me just comment, if I might, on what you were saying in terms of mental health and getting into a dark place and a dark night of the soul. I think that is part of the human experience. I mean, sometimes we do get into dark places. The important thing is to not get stuck there and to move beyond. And it is important to talk, or psychotherapy could be a process that could benefit many people. I want to emphasize the importance of how hard it is to initiate psychotherapy, but also that you are also choosing somebody to work with, and psychotherapy should be helpful. So to get in there, and also being the judge of things, if I'm coming in with a serious depression and it's not getting better, then maybe I need to look at that. But that's sort of consumerism and mental health, and that's a whole nother topic. But yeah, really important to reach out and not get too stuck in dark places.
Yeah, thank you for that, Barbara. And we all, we all need that help sometimes. And sometimes we don't even have to be in a terribly dark place. We just know that we're stuck and we need some help.
Yes. We need somebody to help us to start searching again,
Yeah.
But anyway, you didn't have me on today just to talk about this. So you want me...
No, we're going to talk about mothers and daughters. But first, I want to learn more about you.
How did I get into comedy?
I think was 45 years of coaching, of counseling,
of psychotherapy, being a psychologist. Well, they're two different questions. One started when I was in my early 20s, and my attraction to becoming a psychologist and a therapist. The getting into comedy was, when I was in training for a lot of my work as a psychologist, I was in various staff conferences and would always be sort of joking around a bit and having a lot of fun with that. And then when I was in my 40s, a group of friends were having these 40th birthday parties, and I started dressing up as Saturday Night Live characters and sort of roasting them. And then probably about 15 years ago, I thought, I don't want to do that anymore. So I started going to the comedy clubs, but you know, and you know, it was fun, and I think I was fairly successful, but it was a different age group, and I really wanted to work with boomers.
Of course, they get you.
Yes, yes. So that's when I kind of developed just doing my own stand-up, and also this other piece which is a multi media presentation of midlife and beyond with fairy tales. It's very Jungian with fairy tales and poems and stories, and
I bet
yeah.
it's fun. I bet it's great. I would love to see that sometime.
Okay.
All right.
I'll keep you posted.
Please do.
Mothers
and daughters. So how did you, you know, what compelled you to want to talk about that today? Because we bounced around about a couple of ideas.
Yeah, well, I think because it was before Mother's Day, and I think you know, it's just a great topic as we come upon mothers just being so central, you know, in the gestalt, so to speak.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So happy Mother's Day this weekend, everyone. And let's dig in to what is the relationship about?
Okay. I want to start off by saying the fact of having the mother and the daughter as the same sex is very important. This is a paragraph by Adrienne Rich who talks about this. There is nothing in human nature more resonant with charges than the flow of energy between two biologically alike bodies, one of which has lain in the amniotic bliss inside the other, one of which has labored to give birth to the other. The materials are here for the deepest mutuality and the most painful estrangement. So, you know, from the beginning, the mother and daughter being the same sex means it's easier to project onto the same-sex child, which means I may look to my daughter unconsciously some of my wishes, some of my needs. You know, maybe I could think in my life a little bit about getting from my mom that, you know, her wish to be loved and for me to sort of be responding to that, her wishes that didn't get fulfilled. Or mother-daughter, there's this projective identification. I am you, you are me. It's sort of from the inside out. You could know mother-daughter from the inside out, if you will. Where the boy is always the other, right? Difference in gender, different biology, different social experience. So the boundaries are always more clear. A little story. I remember when I was in training, I was working for a very, very accomplished psychologist. I'll call her Ruth. And she shared this. She said, you know, when my son separated or, you know, ran away from me, it was okay. It was expected, you know. But when my daughter started separating and moving away, it felt like a personal rejection. So there's a lot of difference in that. And, you know, the daughter's separation is more fraught than the boy's separation. So women boomers could ask themselves, did my mother hold me too close? Did she want me to be too much like her? Was there, you know, did I have a mother who pushed me out and didn't allow me to be close? Or for the daughter, the key of here in this blissful attachment and holding back or changing that could feel like a betrayal, right? So there's, again, the capacity for that deep mutuality and also the separation and becoming one's autonomous, independent person is harder for the woman. It's not a clear boundary as with a son.
So that's why we hear so often about the struggles that we as daughters or we as mothers may have with our mothers or daughters, because we are wanting to hold on, but we're also wanting to separate. We're wanting to make them like us, but we're also trying to think about, well, maybe they need to be who they need to be. Is that?
Well, I'm not sure it's all that conscious. You know, so, some of this is conscious, some of this is unconscious. But just that sense of finding yourself as a daughter in such a similar, so much projection, identification going on is very different than the boy who is always separate, right? Always different. That sameness is what the issue is. And the separation within the sameness, because, you know, as Jung talks about in individuation, our goal is to come in and to develop ourselves apart from our influences, you know. And if we have, you know, a mother who sort of holds too tight, or a daughter who holds too tight, they, you know, maybe there isn't this separation.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I think my relationship with my mother was very different than my relationship with my daughter, which was confusing to me. And then I see her relationship as being different with her daughter. And so, you know, that quote that we started with about looking back and looking forward from our influences. I mean, I guess, I mean, is it a reaction to one way of mothering that we are doing something different, or is that the separation?
Well, why do you think, Wendy, that there's differences? Not that that's a bad thing, but when you look and you see those differences in the female, in the generations, why do you think that is there?
Part of it, I think, Barbara, is our biology. You know, is it how you're raised or how you're born, right? And I think I was working hard to please my mother and my father, and I think my daughter was like, "Oh no, I'm ready to separate. I'm 2 years old and I'm gone." You know.
So you can see the, you know, in families, it's sort of when you're in reaction, or like, I'm going to try and not be like my mother. So you're not like your mother in sort of this opposite way. And then in the next generation, it goes back to the other opposite. Because as Jung talks about, the balance is what's important, right?
Yeah.
So if you're in reaction to, and, well, I'm not going to be like my mother in this way, then your daughter is going to maybe reactive to that, right?
Right. So
I don't
we're
mean,
not,
yeah.
I'm sorry, we're not just talking about our biological mother, right? Some of us may have had another kind of relationship that was more of a mother relationship.
Yeah, which is, you know, a good thing. I'm going to talk about that later, but the sense of the mother archetype that has so many different possibilities, which is, you know, we have a biological mother, but there are other aspects of mothers that we get from other women. And I think one of the booms of the, you know, feminism and the women's movement was, you know, that women can mother other women, you know, bringing that to other women. I could talk a little bit about female friendships if you want, Wendy.
Yeah, let's do that. I want to make a couple of comments. Laura, you may be a mother of sons, but you are a daughter of a mother. So there are some dynamics there to think about. And Elizabeth, trying to please the mother, living up to expectations. Yes, that's not always easy. It's a long way to go to let go of trying to please, she says.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So how does something like that influence female friendships? Our
Friendships.
Yeah.
Well, remember that mutual connection that we talked about a minute ago. So in women to women friendships, you get that easy back and forth and talking uninhibited with each other, this intimacy and connection. I remember one time I was at a wedding and I was pretty bored, so I ended up going into the kitchen, and the bathroom, and it was one of these fancy places that, you know, a woman would give you a napkin and all this, and I just was in there talking to her for about a half hour. And when I came out, my partner at the time, his cousin, older man, he said to me, "Where were you?" And I told him about this. How could you, you know, know all that from talking to somebody? And again, I think there is that close connection between women that develops pretty quickly. And then what happens in female friendships? Well, you know, there may be some hurt or anger that comes up, or envy, competition, abandonment, that stirs up either consciously or unconsciously because of the relationship, you know, the original relationship. So friendships become a way of sometimes healing a difficulty in the mother-daughter relationship, or wishes for closeness, that one never did feel close or merged with the mother. So, you know, they're quite an opportunity for healing and exploring and sort of reworking some things and growing. I could talk a little bit about the differences in my friendships through the years as reflected in the mother-daughter, but I think you want to ask me something, Wendy.
Yeah, so I was, it was kind of along that track, like, you know, as we're maturing and meeting new people and recognizing ourselves as independent of our family of origin, I would imagine our friendships evolve, the things we look for in friends evolve. Do you think that's true?
Well, I think that they evolve if we evolve. You know, it doesn't have, they don't have to evolve in a certain direction. I mean, there could be mother-daughters that, you know, don't necessarily grow out of that mutual attachment. And I wouldn't, you know, I see women in therapy dealing with separation issues with their mother that they never dealt with, you know. So it could be all over the board. It's not always determined by age. You know, some of us separate later.
Yeah.
And do we really separate? I mean, separating is not moving across the country. It's being in your own psychological reality and autonomy, and, you know, growing into who you were meant to become, right?
Yeah. And so some of that becomes easier depending on the mother type that you have.
Well, you know, it's an interaction with mother and daughter in particular. I don't think it's, you know, ever easy, because I think separation from, you know, this wonderful cocoon of mutual attachment is difficult. You know, individuation is difficult.
Even if you have a mother that was not kind, that made it hard for you as a daughter, you think it's still difficult to separate?
Yeah. I think with any mother you have, you know, as you evolve, you need to come to terms with, I'm going to talk about this more in archetype, but you need to come to terms with your mother as human being, you know. Maybe she's a, you know, I think we're all affected by women's characteristics, because we're all mothered early by women. So we're, you know, women's, let's say if a woman is critical, we're affected by that more because mostly it's women who are doing the mothering at a young age when children are young.
And I totally get what you just said about seeing ourselves or seeing our mothers for who they are. I think I realized when I went away to college for a year, not living at home that first year, I saw my parents differently and the roles that they played in the family, you know, as more as people than as parents. But that was probably the first time for me. I wasn't that rebellious teenager. But talk about the archetypes. I think that would be interesting.
Okay, I will. I'll do that right now, Wendy.
Okay.
Okay. Now, what is an archetype? That's what you were wondering. And archetypes, it's a difficult concept sometimes to understand, and there's many different definitions of it. But anyhow, the two that I find most helpful is an archetype is a predisposition of the human psyche that seeks its match in the environment. And it's also the deepest, most collective part of the psyche. So an archetype, the mother archetype, may be something, you know, that cavemen dealt with, right? I mean, it's the sort of the psychological history of humanity, if you will, although some people might disagree with that. But anyhow, the mother archetype, everybody is born to mother. And in some ways, mother unconsciously is the image of the totality of life, right? Mother Earth. But I think it's important to remember that every archetype is bipolar, which means the mother archetype, the positive, beautiful, Venus, Mother Mary, protector, nourisher, empathy, positive mirror, that's all the positive mother archetype. The negative is the evil fairy tales, the evil stepmother, Medusa, devouring, disease, holding fast onto destruction. You know, for instance, Mother Earth brings back into itself, right? I mean, you're born, but there's also the destruction of going back into the mother archetype, right? So, you know, when we deal with mother, we're dealing with the archetype of positive and negative. Let me talk a little bit about mother love. What's so important and so central about the mother archetype and how central it is almost to life itself is, you know, in the research on trauma, they say that when people are in terror, they call for either God or mother, which again, I think is pretty interesting. Shows you the depth of the mother love and connection. Here's some definitions of mother love. Most moving and unforgettable memories of our lives, the root of all growth and change, the long silence where everything begins and ends. Mother carries the image of the totality of life. So that's part of the bigness and the depth of the mother archetype. You know, I was thought that when I hear Jewish, oh, you're like a Jewish mother. What do you hear when you hear that, Jewish mother? What part of the archetype of the mother archetype do you hear?
That's where I hear the nourishing. Here, I've made extra chicken soup. Take that home with you. You know, let me load you up with food.
Well, like every archetype that has a bipolar, sometimes I hear a little bit of a anti-Semitic undertone in that, the over-involved mother, the suffocating mother, the devouring mother, right?
Like
So,
in the Asian culture, you have what they call the dragon mother. What do you hear when you hear that? And I also then hear, high expectations. You've got to be better than everybody else. But you could also then hear, the Asian, what's the word? Not anti-Semitic, but the Asian hate, the Asian, just, disrespect.
And which I think leads me to something that I think is really important, to be able to differentiate between one's personal human biological mother and what's the mother archetype. And I'll give an example of that. One of the positive mother archetypes, right, on the positive side, is mother as giver, right? Unconditional giver, the source. Like you were saying, the mother, you always available, always giving. And that turns into sometimes an attitude when it's abused of, which is the negative. Well, if mother doesn't want to give, it's because she's being withholding, right? So we're going to take. That, I think, is part of the basis of abusing the climate, right?
Abusing
Mother Earth. We're going to be, abusing Mother Earth, taking. If she's not giving, we're going to take, right? And the backlash, of, Mother Earth and the hurricanes and the floods and all that. You can't just take. There's a consequence of that because Mother Earth is living, right? So again, that, sometimes things switch between the positive mother archetype and the negative one. But with the biological mother too, sometimes we see her, even on Mother's Day, we're celebrating all the positive archetypes of mother, right? But what do you do when mother is critical? Is that negative? And well, it may not be negative in the sense of it can transform you into a different place. I mean, a lot of healers and psychologists and social workers are, wounded healers, right? So maybe the woundedness could transform into something different. I remember the story about this guy that was laying in the hospital, and this one woman that came in and she said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, you're feeling so bad. Let me hold your hand." Lovely, right? And then another woman, she comes in and she goes, "Well, what are you laying there for? See if you could, and so again, if they could transform into something growth producing."
Yeah. So how do we potentially use our friendships to help heal some of these wounds that we might have received from our mother unintentionally?
Right. Well, I was going to talk about that before. When I look over my path with friends, I could see my early 20s, maybe even 30s, more dependency, more giving up my power, conflict, not getting worked out real well. And it's interesting. I was thinking about this the other day because there was a friend of mine who I wanted to, ask her to become a business associate, but she's very persistent, very powerful woman, very persistent, and I felt like I had to talk to her about this because we need to work with this in our business relationship. So I called her and talked about this, and she says, you're not the first person who has referred to my persistence. And then we sort of went on to kind of negotiating it. But, that's sort of an example of, friendships now for me. Conflict is dealt with well. Lots of space for autonomy, independence. So, you could ask yourself, what do my female friendships look like? How do I need to grow in them? And how do they reflect that, upsetness and stress around separation with
Yeah,
mother
because I
and
look
what
at
that looks like?
my friendships, since we're talking about our personal stuff. And I'm usually the fixer, the healer, the one who's going to make everything better. Don't worry about it, But asking for help for myself is so hard, because I'm the strong one. I'm the independent, strong. I've always got it, very resilient, da 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 da. So one of my things I'm trying to work on now is it's okay to ask for help. It's not going to mean it's not going to mean you're weak. It's not going to mean you're less independent. So I guess those are messages I picked up along the way from family somewhere.
Yeah, for sure. And comes right out of the mother-daughter. I would have a hard time seeing you being around the kitchen asking your mother to help you with everything.
I usually say, just leave it alone. I've got this. She wants to help, and I'm like, no, I got it, Mom.
So a lot of this happens really early, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to end, if I might, Wendy, just by reading the story, this mother-daughter story. It's especially pertinent to me because my mom, who's 91, is coming to, the issues we deal with when we're at that age. And it talks a lot about the mother-daughter, and just what you're saying about the negative mother and the criticism, and also being able to separate from that, right? We have to carry that with us. Okay, this is it's called The Book of Angels by Sophie Burnham, excuse me.
Burn
Nham.
Okay.
My brother and his wife and David and I talked in whispers in the kitchen, as if she could overhear from upstairs. The sight of our mother lying down was still new to us. In 40 years, we'd hardly ever seen her sick. And then suddenly, she had 2 battles with cancer. We worried the pneumonia might be serious. A month later, she was in the hospital. I moved to Baltimore to be nearby. Every day I drove to see her in the hospital, and every day she bickered and quarreled with me. Reporters at the New York Times had gone on strike. My husband was out of work. Our financial situation precarious. I had taken a job as a consultant to a federal agency and was keeping my sanity and reducing my grief with bouts of intense, hard work. My mother picked at me. Why didn't I relax? Just sit in the garden, take it easy, and do nothing for a while. Why did I always have to work? What was wrong with me? Intermittently, she would worry about our finances. Were we all right? Could David find another job? But usually her attention focused on the fact that mine was divided. Looking back, I see quarrels that were partly my fault. I didn't comprehend her fear. Why didn't I tell her I was scared for her and for myself? One day in the hospital, she lit into me again. Peck, peck, peck. Nothing I could do is right. I sank deeper into my chair, desolate. What was I doing here when all she did was tongue lash me? At this moment, a broad-faced Black woman came in to wipe the floors of the cramped hospital room. Hardly fit enough hardly big enough to fit a bed, a chair, and a chest of drawers. My mother was sitting straight up against her pillow. She wore a nightgown with a little bed jacket on it. Her hair, free from its customary bun, lay thin and loose on the pillow. Beside the bed stood an enormous oxygen tank with a plastic tube running down her neck. She shot charges off at me, complaining about the way I dressed and my pathetic efforts to write, and scorning my assignment on urban affairs. Not even the entry of the hospital attendant quieted my mother's tirade. I hunched in my chair, hurt and angry, wondering if I should simply get up and leave. Here was my mother, dying. There were things we should be saying to each other, not nagging and picking. I grudge you the mother talk. The Jamaican charwoman stopped her mopping. My mother and I both looked up startled. Neither of us understood her lilting island accent, but a thrill of recognition threw me. What? I sat up straight. I grudge you the mother talk, she repeated, looking from one of us, smiling with a broad gold smile. My own mother died when I was 12, she sang, and I've no one all these years to give me the mother talk. It's so nice to hear. My mother looked embarrassed. I sat up even straighter, hit by joy. Of course, she was cuffing the cub was all. I had not understood. It took only a few minutes for that beautiful dark-skinned woman to finish the floor. 3 swishes of her mop and she was done. She left, but she left us in a different state. I did not consider her an angel at the time, but marveled at the synchronicity of the encounter. This woman walking in to explain my mother's behavior and walking out again. From that moment, our relationship took a turn. We began to talk on another level. We could approach the topic of death, say how much we cared for each other. A week later, she was dead.
That's a very powerful story. Thank you, Barbara.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for listening.
Yeah. So I want to finish what you're sharing with us by asking you, as I ask everybody, if there are 2 or 3 takeaways you'd like to leave with us at Midlife and beyond to think about with our mother and daughter relationships.
Well, I would say to become aware, to look at them more deeply. Like you were saying, where do I want to evolve? Where do I want to get to? You know, how do I explore that? I think beyond mother and daughter, just for the, you know, that understanding the difference between the mother archetype and Mother Earth. And, you know, it's interesting that the Me Too movement and the climate change are so similar, you know, both in the sense of, you know, women expected to give and taking, right? So the abuse of, you know, the mother archetype. I think that's all I would say for the moment.
Yeah, I think that's important. So to look at your relationship with your mother, become aware of it and where you might need to go and heal next. So
and with female friends.
And with female friends, right. So I wanted to share how people could find out more and talk to you if they're curious about more about this and about the work you do as the comedy shrink. So you can email Barb at barbkauf, Kauf, the number 8 at gmail.com. And you can check out her website, comedyshrink.com, where you can maybe book her for a workshop or a program that you have coming up, because that would be a lot of fun. So thank you, Barbara. And
thank you, Wendy.
Yeah. And I just wanted to also say that if there are ways that I can help out with questions that you have, you can email me at wendy@heyboomer.biz, B-I-Z, and also ask to join our Facebook group where we support each other as we're moving into what's next. My guest next week is a woman named Heidi Skolnik. Heidi is co-author of The Whole Body Reset, and it's about the power of protein timing to keep our bodies running at maximum efficiency as we age. The program was developed in conjunction with AARP and is well researched. And I'm going to be giving away 2 Whole Body Reset books to listeners who refer someone to the show and that person subscribes to the email list. So I'll have more information about how to do that next week, but start thinking about who you might want to refer so that you can get a copy of the book. Like I said, the Hey Boomer What's Next group on Facebook, try and join that. Don't forget about checking out some of the Road Scholar trips at road, ROAD, scholar.org/heyboomer. Some amazing trips. I know you would love them. And thanks for tuning in today. And I want to remind you to live with passion, live with relevance, live with courage. And remember, we are never too old to set another goal or dream a new dream. My name is Wendy Green, and this has been Hey Boomer.